pages on Instagram, I'll say that. And one of the recent debates that's kind of been ongoing is we hear a lot of myths about HBCUs and debunking some of those untruths as far as this divide of being less Black because you attended a PWI versus HBCU and the culture, and kind of diminishing, at least from my experience, your Greekness and your Blackness for being at one institution versus the other. And I feel like overall it's very divisive. So can you kind of address the perspective and the conversation on that so others can have clarity and maybe some greater depth of understanding on that topic?
So I'm actually gonna use my experience, and it's interesting that you talked about that you mentioned this thing about Blackness and HBCUs. Number one, understand that HBCUs are not monolithic, right? HBCUs have their own unique identity. Each one has its own unique identity. The way your experience is maybe at North Carolina A&T is different than it is at North Carolina Central, is different than it is at Fisk, is different than it is at Tuskegee, is different than it is at Howard, is different than it is at Edward Waters University, is different, right? Every institution has its own identity. That's the first thing. So let's take that off the table.
Yes.
Because to say an HBCU is an HBCU in general, you're generalizing with the understanding that you make an assumption that all HBCUs are alike, and that is not the case. Okay, so let's take care of that first. Then you deal with the second part, which is what you're talking about, which is, well, if you go to an HBCU, then you're Blacker than if you. Let me tell you something. So I'm sorry to get a little less professional in this, right?
Talk somewhere.
But black is black is black. It ain't no such thing, and all Black folk are not monolithic either. That is not a monolith. We all have different experiences. We live in different places. We speak different. We have different. The experience is different, right? And so I think now I'm about to get into some other stuff that is a little bit more dear to my heart too, and that's this understanding of what it is to be Black. And that is a question that I've always had to ask myself as I was at A&T. I am clearly a light-skinned Black woman. So for any of you that are confused, yes, I am Black. I'm very light-skinned. And going to A&T in the 1990s, in the early 90s, when you had School Days that came out right before then, you had A Different World that is out and right, before then, and you had this whole understanding or notion of colorism and you blackity black here and you not blackity black there and all this other stuff. I consistently got told I was not Black enough to go to A&T. I was questioned about my Blackness. Yes.
Wait a minute, Dr. Wilkes. What? Hold
yes,
on.
ma'am.
Sit all the way up in my seat.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
yes,
God.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It was nothing for somebody to say, "Oh, you're not really Black, or you're not Black enough to be here, or you're not Black enough to talk about this, or you're not." But the last time I checked, during my senior year, my car was pulled over by a police officer that did not have it, and it was only for the reason that it was about who I was and the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. And how I identified. And so there was always this question of color and whether or not you were Black enough or not Black enough or too Black or all of these notions of Blackness. And I think what we need to do is get out of the notion of whether you're Black enough or whether your Black experience is more Black than somebody else's, right? And have an understanding that those are only ways of decisiveness or divisiveness to really keep us away from the real questions that we should be talking about, or the real questions that we should be asking, or those things that we should be addressing, right? Whether a student attends a PWI, in your case, you said, I attended a predominantly white institution because they gave me the funds and the access that I needed to be able to get an education. That does not mean that you are any less Black or any more than anyone else, right? I chose to attend North Carolina A&T because I wanted to attend a HBCU as a state school, and I could afford it. Was affordable, right? I was able to afford it. I'm a first generation college student, and I didn't know what college was about, and I just knew I wanted to go, and I was gonna get there some kind of way. But what I mean in all of that is, this understanding of qualifying what that means. And at the end of the day, who does it satisfy to qualify what black is, right? Who wants to know, and why is it important? So to really kind of get back to the crux of your question, um, I'll say I don't think it's an understanding of you being less black if you didn't attend the HBCU, or you being more black if you did, right? I attended one, and I still have people that are shocked just because of the way I look, right? Until I open up my mouth and I speak, and they say, "Well, what are you, or what you is?" And I say, "I'm a black woman," and they say, "Oh, I knew that, I knew it," because it's so. Those are
That
still
is
the
so
things
ignorant.
right now in 20, that's but those are the things in 2024 that I still have to deal with, right? That psychologically created spaces and places for me to be uncomfortable in my skin amongst even my own people. So I do think, however, that there is a divisiveness, however, in that has always been consistent historically within the black community to create division in order to avoid a level of cohesiveness, and in order for us to get away from being able to create a unified front on specific issues that are really pertinent to the black community. And, again, at the end of the day, whether you attend a HBCU, whether you attend a PWI, as long as you do something that gives back as a citizen, that is going to be conducive to you making a difference and a change, not only in your life, but in the lives of someone else, your family, your friends. As long as you are doing that in a way that is positively motivating and not denigrating to someone else because of their choice, then that's what matters. And we got to get out of this notion, because again, we have bigger fish to fry that have nothing to do with how light you are and how dark you are, how black you are and how black you ain't. But start getting out of that part of that and start asking questions like, why are you not funding HBCUs to the same level that you're funding PWIs, so that they can afford to bring students who want to attend an HBCU, and those students be able to have that opportunity, because those HBCUs can afford to be able to give scholarships and money so the students who want to go can attend those schools. Those are the questions that we should be asking.
And doesn't that also tie into alumni dollars? Because to be honest, when I was a freshman at my PWI, Middle Tennessee State University, I worked with the Alumni Foundation, and our job was we would call alum and they would donate every year. And
Mhm.
just to be honest, the give back from non-Caucasian students versus Black students, there is a gap there. And you see that when you drive by and look at Greek Row, you see mansions because of their alumni dollars, their donors that give back to the universities and these organizations. So, can you address? Yes, we can all be proud of our schools, whether it's an HBCU or PWI, but just the fact of the lack of give back once they've graduated. But everybody's at homecoming.
um, it is so interesting. So we have there are some institutions where like alumni giving is like really high and it's really good, right? And then you have some not so good. I think you have to look at the individual circumstance and situation of what's going on.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use this as an example. Let's say I'm a student. I graduated, and let's say it's $20,000 a year for me to attend an institution. That is, and it's, let's say I graduate in 4 years. By the way, average time to graduate is 5. United States government calculates it as 6. So as long as you can graduate between 4 and 6 years, you're on point, you're on task. So let's say you take 5 years to graduate at $20,000. That's $100,000. Let's say you took out student loans. You have to pay that back within 6 months of graduating. So you have that debt that you're already incurring as you're in school. And most of our students, they will take out the maximum amount in order to be able to get a refund check or to get some level of refund, because that refund is not necessarily helping just that student. For some students, they may be sending that money back home because there's a need of where they came from versus where they are. And I'm talking about kind of extreme circumstances. So let's say that student is kind of utilizing that to also help those situations. So now I have $100,000 in debt that I owe in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. And let's say I'm majoring and I can't get a job in my field per se within the first 6 months because I didn't do any internships. I didn't do anything while I was in school. I had a good time. I just didn't do anything that would have given me some level of experience. Or even if I did, the average salary coming out of college, that student may make 40, 50, 60. They're not going to make a six-figure salary coming out of college. And so I know I'll use the city of Charlotte as a prime example. My son my son attended UNC Charlotte, was thinking about trying to get an apartment in Charlotte, and he couldn't afford it. Not on his salary. He had a salary. He was making $45,000 in salary, but rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood was almost $2,000 a month, plus a car payment, plus gas, plus insurance, plus, and plus, and plus. And when you start plussing things together, by the time by the time it's all said and done, a student a graduate literally can barely afford to feed themselves and get themselves to work. And now you want them to give back to the institution. So if I don't have anything to give to my own household, I can't give back to my alma mater no matter how much I want to do it. So what does all of that mean? Excuse me. I think that one of the things we have to also think about is not just the input of our schools and the students that we're bringing in, and the fact that we can accept students, we give access. It's one of the wonderful things about HBCUs is that we provide access to students who want to be able to attend. But I think along that path, we also need to be providing opportunities for financial literacy, financial education, not necessarily literacy, because you can have the money, but do you know what to do with it in order to be able to not just survive yourself, but also thrive and be able to give back so that somebody else can give. But if you don't have it to give, you can't give it back. And I think for a lot of our students or a lot of our alums, I think that that's the space that they're in. They're just trying to make ends meet on a regular, everyday basis. I don't think it's that they don't want to give back. I think a lot of them want to. I think that they just don't. What I advise alumni to do, the best way you can give back if you can't